How many people do you know that those two songs would be appropriate at their funeral? I don't need to say more, do you? You understand? On the serious side, Buster Mitchell Franklin Estes III died Sunday, July 23rd at his residence. A native of Louisville, Kentucky, he was the son of the late Mitchell F. Estes Jr. and Lillian Dale Byram Estes. He was also preceded in death by his maternal grandparents, C.V. Dick Byram and Willie Beatrice Starks Byram, and paternal grandparents, Mitchell F. Estes Sr. and Myrtle Estes. Incidentally, Buster was born on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1962. Survivors include his wife, Michelle Estes Franklin, children Jessica Scott and her husband Dalton Franklin, Mitchell F. Estes IV of Lexington, and Talisha Sullivan and her husband Johnny of Panama City, Florida. He was papa to his grandchildren, Tegan Scott, Braden and Hadley Sullivan. He was also Uncle Buster to many. Goes without saying, Buster was not only a unique individual, but based on how many people are here and how many people have been here during all of this, he had a wide influence, a very wide influence. And I trust for each one of us that influence was good and to the best of his ability. Several things I want to just mention. These you already know. I've known Buster for a little over 28 years, but some of you have known him all of his life, and some of you have known him for other periods of time. But things that stick out in my mind about Buster is, number one, he was a hard worker. And in Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 10, I don't know whether he thought of this verse much or not. I expect he did, but he certainly lived it. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Whatever Buster did, he did it heartily. He did it in a big way and really meant what he was doing and stood by it. He was a friend. I guess that's one of the biggest traits probably. He was a friend. Don't know telling how many hundreds of people. I don't know. It might even be thousands for all I know, but based on the number of people that have come through the funeral home yesterday and through the line here today, he was friend to a lot of people. Of course, some he was kin to, some he was are his church brethren and so forth, but he certainly was a friend. I think about Proverbs 18 and verse 24. I think this probably is one of the reasons that Buster had so many friends. That verse says, "A man who has friends must show himself friendly." Some people sometimes say, "I don't have any friends." Well, you sort of have to show yourself a friend. And if Buster did anything right, and he did a lot of things right, but if there was only one thing he did right, he did that right. He knew how to show you friendship and be your friend and so forth. And there's a poem that I've used a few times through the years when I thought it was appropriate, and I think this is very appropriate at this time. Some of you have heard it before, but just think about Buster as I read this. "They're hermit souls that live withdrawn in the peace of their self-content. There are souls like stars that dwell apart in a fellowless firmament. They're pioneer souls that blaze their paths where the highways never ran. But let me live by the side of the road and be a friend to man. Let me live in a house by the side of the road where the race of men go by, the men who are good and the men who are bad, as good and as bad as I. I would not sit in the scorner's seat or hurl the cynic's ban. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I see from my house by the side of the road, by the side of the highway of life, the men who press with the ardor of hope, the men who are faint with strife. But I turn not away from their smiles or their tears. Both are parts of an infinite plan. Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I know there are brook-gladdened meadows ahead and mountains of wearisome height, that the road passes on through the long afternoon and stretches away to the night. But still I rejoice when the travelers rejoice and weep with the strangers that moan, nor live in my house by the side of the road like a man who dwells alone. Let me live in my house by the side of the road where the race of men go by. They are good, they are bad, they are weak, they are strong, wise, foolish, and so am I. Then why should I sit in the scorner's seat or hurl the cynic's ban? Let me live in a house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. I think you would agree that that poem, written by Sam Walter Foss, could very well be one that Buster Estes wrote. That was sort of his philosophy as I see it. He endeared himself to many of you in strange ways. Sometimes it was ordinary ways. I hope if you haven't already done so, you'll go on Facebook and so forth and look at the kinds of comments that people have made about the influence he had on them. One was from a former member at Bethany, Connie Ellis. Among other things, she's telling about when she and her family started going to Bethany, and she says she'd been away for a while and said, when I moved back to Kentucky to attend Bethany, I was showered with Buster's large personality and gift for gab. So, you know, he had those kinds of influence. Another person said, I'll always think of him as a father figure. Another said he had a big heart and even bigger laughter. Another individual that I saw the other day down at Franklin, Tennessee, grew up at Bethany, or at least partly grew up at Bethany, and he said when he was 9 years old, they had moved to the area and started going to the Bethany church. And being 9 years old, he sort of wondered if he could fit in or whatever. And Buster is the one who took him under his wing and helped him blend in with everybody else. And that fella is to this day appreciative of that. The best one I saw, and I found out sometime this afternoon, this applies to at least two of you, maybe more. But this is a good demonstration of the character and the life philosophy, to some degree, of Buster Estes. One young lady, Hannah, she was Hannah Scott at the time, was a child, I don't know how old, sometime before she was grown. She said she was at the dessert table at a dinner at Bethany. And she went over to get some dessert, and Jimmy Law and Buster Estes told her she was looking at a meringue pie. And they told her that you probably don't want to eat that because that meringue is made out of cow slobber. Jimmy may be turning red. She said it was several years before she would eat meringue pie. Well, that's Buster. That's Buster. He loved, we live in Tennessee, just barely. We live down on Highway 52 at Portland. And, but from the first day we went to Bethany, Buster and Jimmy, of course, his sidekick, they have always kidded me about Tennessee, called, all kinds of joking things. Well, all I do is fire it back about Kentucky people. And so, we had a good relationship because he was an ordinary person and yet unique. He didn't wear any high hats. He didn't act elevated in any way, even though he had a good education and so forth. But you understand what I'm saying, that he was the kind of person that is easy to be friends with. He had a great love for his family. I guess you've noticed on the pictures, and I don't know how many there are must be over 100 of them on the video and also out in the lobby. Have you noticed in the pictures that nearly every one of them has some of Buster's family in the picture? Sometimes a whole bunch of his family. He was a family man. He loved his family. And he protected his family, and he worked for his family, and he helped his family, and did the kinds of things that a loving father and husband and kinsman would do. And of course, he loved God. The Lord was the center of his life. Each person has their own unique way of living the Christian life, if they're a Christian, and Buster had his way of doing it and was very effective. He was a very important part of the Bethany Church of Christ. He was always concerned about spiritual matters. In fact, one of the people I quoted a while ago said that she spent a lot of time after services discussing Bible things with Buster. And in fact, sometimes the two of them had to be ushered out of the church building so somebody could lock up because they talked so long. But, you know, this is from a fellow who loved the Lord and who did what he could to serve the Lord. And I don't know when, I never thought to ask or never had the opportunity to ask. Somewhere down the line, Buster became a Christian by believing in Jesus with all of his heart and by responding to the instructions that the Lord has. Those instructions about repentance of sin, confession of the faith in Christ, and being buried with the Lord in baptism. And I'm sure if Buster could be here today and say so, I don't know if he's ever preached a sermon or anything along that line or not. I think he would highly recommend that for each one of us, for all of us. There's a poem that I copied out of a little funeral brochure from down at Portland. And I think this would also express the attitude that Buster had and possibly would have in whatever way he could. It's called Afterglow. I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when day is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and bright and sunny days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry in the sun of happy memories that I leave behind when day is done. So our lives live on, and we trust and pray that each one of us, our life will live on for the better. And now to us for a couple of minutes. I don't have to tell you that this is not a unique occurrence in life. This is a part of life. Leaving this life is a part of being in this life. And the scriptures are very plain and simple about that. In Hebrews 9 and verse 27, it's appointed unto man once to die. But then comes the serious part. After that, the judgment. That's why all of us need to live our lives in harmony with God's will and do the things that we're supposed to do. Because we too, unless the Lord comes again first, we too, every one of us, will go this way. There's a song that a lot of us sing. We're going down the valley one by one with our faces toward the setting of the sun. And it goes on because each one of us, the young, the old, the little, the big, no matter, all of us are headed this same way. So that's why it's important for us to live our lives the way we should. I think Buster understood that's why it's important for him to live like he did as a faithful Christian, because we don't stay in this world. We leave, and there are better things ahead. I'll leave you with this passage. In Matthew chapter 22, a lawyer among the Pharisees, came to Jesus and asked him, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And Jesus gave an answer, I'm sure, that the fellow didn't exactly expect, because that's the way Jesus always did things. He answered in unexpected ways a lot of times. But Jesus said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." And then he wrapped those two statements up by saying, "On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." This has always been God's will for his creation, and it still is his will for his creation, And it'll be His will for every one of us until the end of time, that we love the Lord our God with all of our heart, all of our soul, and all of our mind, and our neighbor as ourself. And I believe the one lying here before us did the best he could do in that department. And it's up to all of us to do the best we can do in that same way. Let's bow together. Dear Lord, we're thankful even for this day of sadness, this day of grief, and yet in the long run, this day of celebration. We're thankful, Father, for the many friends and family and neighbors and all the folks that have shown up to support Michelle and the family. We're thankful, Father, that Buster was able to live a life and have such wide influence. We're thankful for his life. We're thankful for that influence. We ask you to help each one of us to live out our lives in imitation of the good things that he and others have done in front of us and for us. We're thankful especially for Jesus, for the sacrifice he's made, the life he lived, the death he died, and the resurrection he experienced. And we ask you to help us to always look to you, to love you with all of our heart, soul, and mind, and our neighbors as ourselves. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
My name is Eddie Jent, and I was a close friend of Buster and graduated with him in 1980. And when I was hearing that, I'm like Pastor Tucker, when I was hearing that song, Sharp Dressed Man, I could just picture the music video and Buster center stage in his overalls. That was just flashing through my head. Michelle has asked me to read 3 things to you, so let me read these things to you. This is what she wrote. Buster was born in Louisville, Kentucky, with lots of kids in a neighborhood. At 14, he moved to Franklin in the county on a road that saw maybe 2 cars a day. Culture shock. He was quickly adopted by the community as if he had always been here. As a freshman at Franklin Simpson High School, he continued to play football, a sport he truly loved. Dancing Bear, they called him. He loved the game and his teammates, a big young man who did many things to make his teammates wonder about him. Eat worms or Granddaddy Longlegs. Buster was on the 1979 Franklin Simpson High School championship football team and a member of FFA. He was a 1980 graduate of Franklin Simpson High School. He was also a 1984 graduate of Western Kentucky University with a BS in agriculture finance. And I could go on a lot about Buster having a BS, but I'm going to stop right there. Buster met his wife Michelle at WKU in the spring of 1983. They started dating late in 1985 and married in December of 1987. He later said, only a real man could get a hot brunette while driving a baby blue Ford Pinto. While in college, Buster worked for Kentucky Seed Improvement Association, inspecting certified seed fields. He always had a tobacco crop and later row cropped the family farm for a few years. In 1994, he found his true work calling, construction excavation. Buster was a natural with a bulldozer, built pole barns, fencing, concrete, and anything outside of electricity. His children, Jessica and Mitch, grew up going to work with him. Up in the morning, pack a lunch, and off to work. Buster was a true man of the earth. He enjoyed hunting, fishing, gardening, and taking care of all around him. Buster was a supervisor and a vice chairman of the Simpson County Soil and Water Conservation District for 24 years. Buster was loud, boisterous, and full of life, with a quick wit and quiet intelligence. He had a wide range of friends due to his non-judgmental presence. He was a member of the Okolona Church of Christ, then Bethany Church of Christ, where he was a deacon. Buster was very serious about his faith and the fact that you should live in such a way to follow Jesus Christ, with your soul going to heaven. He had the privilege and responsibility of baptizing his 3 children, niece, nephew, and a few others into a life with Christ. A true joy of his was helping to coach Little League football as Mitch grew. Buster helped coach his teams until middle school. Come the high school years, Buster and Michelle were officers of the Franklin Simpson Quarterback Club. Many afternoons, Buster could be found helping to prepare the fields for a game. Friday nights found him on the sidelines in the chain crew. As many will tell, Buster's life was his family, and they were always first. He loved his family and felt it was his duty to take care of them, train them, and love them. He could always be found at work, home, church, or where his children were. He and Michelle picked up a few other children along the way to love and guide. Faith, family, and friends were his world. He was proud to be a blue-collar man, to work and provide for his loved ones. He was Pawpaw to his grandchildren and Uncle Buster to many. That was his joy in life. He spoiled his wife with love and many more actions that showed that love. The next thing she asked me to read was a letter from Jason Aldridge. He actually wrote one to her and then one to Buster. And that letter to Michelle says, more than anything else right now, I want to be with my family. I want to be with Jess and Mitch and Michelle, helping them through this loss. I want to give them the hug that Buster gave me. I want to be present, sitting around making wisecracks at inappropriate times. I want to stay for weeks, for months, for years, until the pain is at least softened. Though I know it never leaves, and my initial reaction was to hop on a plane, no matter the cost or consequences. I love Hawaii, which is where he lives now, but I never hated it more than times like these. The core of my being says that when my family needs me, I should be there in a heartbeat, and reality is I can't. I'm at least 12 hours away, no matter how it goes. I hate it. I hate not being present for them. I loathe that there's even a decision to be made. The grieving process for me involves being with my kids and my family that makes my decision harder. It feels selfish. When your family needs you, you drop everything and go. Board the pets, drop all responsibilities, be present. It's rending and agonizing, and I've been so torn. Am I being selfish, wanting to stay so I can make sure Fiona's pierced ears are healing? Am I making the right decision that I want to help Quinn through her ear infection and getting her other ear pierced? These things seem so trivial in the light of what has happened. I know Cheryl can handle it on her own, but I want my own kids to know I'm there for everything. Is it selfish to rely on my own kids to help me through my grief? Am I looking for absolution? If I'm being honest, I really don't know. But as I'm sitting here mourning the loss of someone I hold dear, I think about what he would say in this situation. I think about what advice he would give me, and it's the right advice, even if not for the same reasons. So if nothing else, I know he would understand. And then he gives a conversation between him and Buster. Jason, what's the right decision? Buster, stay in Hawaii. Jason, but I want to be there for our family. Buster, what's it take? 2 months to get here? I'll be done and over by the time you get here. Jason, well, I could fly. It'd only be 12 hours. Buster, you're crazy. I'm getting on that plane. You're getting on that plane over my dead body. Jason, Buster, you interrupted, still not getting on that plane. And then the letter to Buster. I don't have a lot of male role models in my life, but Buster's one of those. I took a lot about how to be a dad, but more about how to be a man from Buster. Family first, and being present were big ideals that I hold in my heart. Respect for people, love. I still remember the silent and strong hug this mountain of a man gave me when my own dad died. Buster was a pillar of a man who wasn't afraid to show love and affection, and even when I started to pull away, he held on. Strong and resolute, making sure I knew that I was loved and cared for, and it would be okay. He cried with me, and that somehow made things easier. Not better, just easier. But the memories I cherish the most surround Buster's quick wit. We used to riff off each other and see who could make each other laugh more, getting more and more absurd with the jokes each time until we were both laughing so hard we couldn't talk. We would take an offhand comment and build on each other's scenarios, turning it into a wild and hilarious and so often irreverent running commentary. Both of us being competitive, neither would stop, and Buster could hold his own in this arena like no one else. I remember so many times wheezing and trying to catch my breath because I was laughing so hard for something that started as just an innocent comment, but neither of us would let it go. I remember him doubled over in laughter, and man, could Buster laugh. He didn't just fill the room, he filled the house. If I'm half the man he is, I will consider my life a success. I certainly consider his to have been. Like everyone he's ever met, I too will miss him. If I didn't introduce myself, I'm Eddie Jent, and Buster and I were really, really close, especially through high school. And when Michelle called me, I shared with her, I said, that's going to be really hard. And so we began to talk, and we was talking about Buster, and I can just hear him if he knew I was up here doing this, he would look at Michelle and he would say, "Why in the world did you get that clown to do my funeral?" I can just hear him. And then she said, and then he would try to make you as nervous as possible. He would ride you and ride you and ride you and try to make you as nervous as possible. And I know that's true. But when a person dies, that individual leaves a mark on the world. That's that individual's legacy. While a person's legacy can involve money or their valuables, it really is more about their values. Ultimately, the story of a person's life reflects the individual's legacy. And Buster left a great legacy. Buster left a legacy as a Christian. Buster was a deacon at his church, as we've mentioned, and he was very open about his faith in Jesus Christ. I talked to his children, and they shared with me that he baptized both of them, and you could just hear the feeling in their voice when they shared about Buster baptizing them. There's a verse that says, "For what is your life? Is it even a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away?" And that's found in James 4:14. And I think we would all agree that Buster's life was not near long enough. We just loved him so much, we'd love to keep him around. But our life always is short, and we have to prepare for the time that the Lord will call us. And Buster would want you to know that he wants you to be prepared. So Buster has a legacy as a Christian. Buster also has a legacy as a husband. Michelle talked about him, and she said one of the things that she really admired was Buster's faith. And that, as all college people do, they would gather together in some place, and they would be gathered together doing what college people do. And Buster would be there, and it'd come time for Wednesday night, and Buster would announce, "Hey, I'm going to church. If any of you all want to join me, you're welcome." Not judgmental in any way, just as a matter of fact. He would announce, "That's where he's going, and you're welcome to go with me." And she said that's one of the things that really attracted her to him, is that he wasn't judgmental. He just had a sincere faith. And the other thing that she said that really attracted her to Buster was, she said, "He can make me laugh." That's a common thread with Buster. She said, "He can make me belly laugh. You know, he can really make me laugh." She shared with me this, and I certainly did not know this. Buster did over 95% of the cooking in their home. Over 95%. Family's helping here. They're saying over 99. But and also the grocery shopping. So you men may have some stuff to live up to. I'm glad my wife is not here. But I thought this was the most interesting thing about Buster cooking. She told me after he would cook a really good meal, he would go through the house going, "Michelle, I'm too good for you. I am way too good for you." And so he'd go through the house screaming that he was way too good for her after he cooked a really great meal. Buster left a legacy as a father. Jessica said Buster wanted her to learn to do everything a guy could do, or at least almost everything a guy could do. And one of the things he would always say to her is, "Jessica, you're just a girl." And that was kind of a running joke between them. And he would encourage her and tell her that she could do anything, and that she was just a girl and she could do it. And she said that when Buster made people laugh, it shook the foundation of the house. Mitch commented on the fact that he always challenged them, not in an unreasonable way, but he just wanted them to be better than he and Michelle were. So he always encouraged them. And then they all agreed, everybody I've talked to has agreed, Buster could never be on time. It was against the rules for Buster to be on time, unless it was for a football game or for one of them to go hunting. They said he couldn't even be on time for his own hunting trips, but if it was one of the kids, he could make it on time. I heard that from several people, that Buster really wasn't a timely person. And then one of my favorite stories they told me, and only Buster would have a pet donkey. Only Buster. And so this donkey would come to the window, and they had a screen in the window for a while, but the donkey ripped it out with his teeth and would knock on the window until Buster passed a treat through. And then at one time when Jessica was hunting, she had to call and say, "Dad, get your dog. Your dog is under my tree." And he said, "No, I've got all the dogs up." She said, "No, your long-eared dog." So Buster went outside and whistled, and here comes the donkey. But one of the funny parts, and became a family joke, was the donkey showed up the window one day when they had company. And they said, "Buster's ass is in the window again." I thought that was pretty funny. Buster's legacy as a friend. And there's so many people in this room that could, comment on what Buster was like to them as a friend. But Buster had a quick wit. And I asked Michelle if it's okay to tell this story. Many of you in the room know Steve Newman back there. Steve Newman is the only person I know in the annual and has his picture in the annual with a gun. So he's always had a gun. When I was growing up, seemed like he had a new gun every week or two. So we had lots of football games out in their lot out there, and Buster was playing football one day. Well, Newman had gone to pick up his girlfriend and drove up, and he has a new gun and a new girlfriend. So Buster's over there, and all the guys come around, and he gets out to show off his new gun, and he's looking at that. Everybody's looking at it, and so they yell at Buster, "Buster, come look at Newman's new gun, new toy. Newman, come look at, Buster, come look at Newman's new toy." And so Buster replies, "Which one, the gun or the girl?" You never wanted to match wits with Buster. He was too quick. My personal story with Buster that I remember more than anything else, in 1980, they did the NCAA basketball tournament much different than they do now. Used to, back then, they would set up all the sites, and the first and second round of the tournament was going to be played at Western. We didn't know who was going to play, but we knew people were going to play at Western. So Buster and I got together, and we decided that was a business opportunity. So we bought tickets. We didn't have much money. I can remember that reserve seats were $16 and bleacher seats were $8. So Buster and I bought 4 tickets, 1 for each of us and 2 to sell. So we bought the tickets, we put them up for sale, let our classmates know that we had these tickets for sale, and a classmate bought them for $100 each because the tournament sold out. It was Kentucky and Indiana and Western and Toledo and Virginia Tech, I think, were some of the teams playing. We thought we were like king business people. And then the mother called of the classmate who had bought the tickets. Well, we got quite the chewing. And I understand that now that I'm a parent. Back then I didn't understand as well. But we, being the kind and generous and compassionate people we were, we offered to give his money back, but we weren't going to reduce the price. Probably might not have been our best choice ever, but that's what we decided. And we ended up selling the tickets to the same guy for the same price. And I can remember going to Mitch's house and telling him about it, Buster's dad, and he thought we were geniuses. Man, he was so proud of us that we had sold those tickets for $100. Buster had leaves a legacy with his football team. He loved you guys loved playing with you, loved being with you, loved the camaraderie more than the game. Buster leaves a great legacy. I'm going to close with two things. I was talking with Bill Johnson and Jackie Thurman yesterday afternoon, and one of them commented that you meet a lot of interesting people, but you don't meet a lot of characters. Buster was a character. He was an interesting person, but I don't think any of us would disagree that he was a character. And then Jessica sent me a text last night, and it said this: for being an only child, he sure had a lot of brothers and sisters and multiple extended family who loved him dearly. And we do. We love Buster Estes. The man he was, the legacy he left, the many people he impacted, and the many ways in which he impacted people. Let's pray together. Father, I thank you for the opportunity to speak about such a great man. I lift up this family to you. I pray that you bless them in the coming days, that you allow them to grieve and remember and laugh about all the memories this man created. God, you bless them. We thank you for the time we have today to celebrate his life. We thank you for the influence that he had on so many of us. And we ask that you guide in the coming days. In your holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
apologize that I left this out at the beginning, but this family deeply, deeply appreciates all of your support, your love, your hugs, your kisses, your prayers, all the things you've done, and even just your presence at this occasion and yesterday as well. They very much appreciate it, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention it earlier.